Coming up on today's
Elevate
halftime
your
broadcast.
understanding and your concept of 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Does your lifestyle reflect the life of a true disciple of Christ? 5 minutes of pleasure, but result in a lifetime of pain and an eternity of torment and punishment.
And now,
Top of the day
today's
to you,
Bible
and thank
teaching
you for
with
tuning in to
executive
today's
strategist
broadcast
Toni
of Halftime.
Emehel.
I am so delighted that you've taken time out of your day to join in to today's Bible teaching. You know, we have been studying the elements of deception and the likely consequences of falling prey to deception over the past few weeks. I sincerely hope that you've received some nuggets of wisdom out of this Bible teaching and some points of introspection that caused your heart to be pricked toward God in establishing a firm understanding of His Word and how it should play out and manifest in your life. So today we're going to continue in this same vein, yet going a little deeper, a little wider in our understanding of deception and those things that come to deceive us and derail us from the plans of God and the will of God manifesting in our lives. So go ahead and get your note-taking utensils ready, because I'm going to share with you a story, and I want you to see yourself in the story and ask yourself some critical questions. But before I share this story with you, I want you to think in terms of where deception takes its root in your life. The first point I'd like for you to understand is that deception takes place first in the mind. It attacks your perception. And it attacks your perception because its goal is to gain your participation. Okay? So number one, deception takes place in the mind. Number two, deception attacks your perception. Number three, the reason deception attacks your perception of things is because its goal is to achieve your participation in something that goes against the will of God for your life. So once you begin to understand that, the challenge with falling prey to deceptive practices in your life leads you to being out of place. It leads you to being out of order. It leads you to being out of alignment. It leads you to being placed in harm's way. It leaves you vulnerable, uncovered, and sometimes seemingly unprotected. So what does that really mean? Because deception is a figment of your imagination, okay? Because deception comes to attack you in your mental processes, your thinking, and your perception of things. When you're operating under a spirit of deception, you are no longer able to perceive the presence of God in your life. You are no longer able to perceive God's will for your life. Why? Because deception has distorted your perception. Okay? So now the lenses that you see things through or perceive things through have been filtered through deception, which means that the end result of your understanding is based on deception. Because again, the goal of deception is to get your participation in something that's outside of the will of God. See, that's why perception is so dangerous, because whenever you begin to pass your decision-making processes through lenses that will only allow you to be vulnerable to deception, then the decisions that you make will lead you to a place of being out of order, out of alignment with the principles of biblical teachings and biblical practices. Okay? We're talking about deception today. I'm trying to save you from that next faulty decision that will lead you to a place of being out of order, out of alignment, out of position for a blessing because you've fallen prey to deception. See, when you're operating under the spirit of deception, oftentimes that's when the enemy will come to you and say, see, they weren't with you anyway. You're all by yourself, so you just as well do it. Or, they don't think much of you anyway, so if you do it, you're not changing their perception of you. You're nothing anyway. People don't like you. You don't measure up. They think the worst of you, so why not go ahead and do it? I mean, you're not going to change the way they think about you. See, that's deception. That's operating under the spirit of deception. And most of these conversations take place, they're not even verbal conversations. They take place in your mind. And that's how deception works. It first takes place in your mind. And then Satan will send a messenger to water the seeds of deception that he's already placed in your mind. So today, again, I'm going to share this story with you. See yourself in this story and ask yourself, how have you allowed the devil to enter your mind and plant seeds of deception? And who in your life has operated as a messenger from the pits of hell to water those seeds? Once you identify those seeds, where they lay, where they've been planted, and the messengers that come with tainted water to water the seeds of deception, now you're in a position to apply God's word. Now you're in a position to resist the devil so that he shall flee from your life. Now you're in a position to avoid deception. So I share with you today a tale of sorts in order to enlighten your understanding of how God is always with you, no matter what the enemy may tell you. Top of the day to you.
You are listening to Halftime with Executive Strategist Toni Emehel.
Because I Love You, authored by Max Lucado, read by Toni Emehel. Because I Love You. Long ago, in a land far away, and unlike any you've ever seen, there lived a wise man named Shaddai. Shaddai was a large man with a tender heart. He had bright blue eyes and a long, thick beard. When he laughed, which is something he did often, his cheeks would lift until his eyes became half moons of joy. When he sang, which is something else he did often, everything stopped to listen. Tall aspens would bend, squirrels, butterflies, and birds would pause. Even the children would turn when they heard his voice. And well they should. It was for them he sang. And for the children, Shaddai had built a wonderful village. It was more than any child could dream. The children plunged into the sky blue pond. They squealed as they soared high on the swings hung from the apple tree branches. They scampered through the meadows and giggled in the orchards. The sun never seemed to set too early, and the cool night sky always brought a quiet peace. And most of all, Shaddai was always near. When Shaddai wasn't in the meadow with the children or in the orchards with the children, he was in his workshop with the children. He loved to be with them while he worked. They loved to smell the sawdust, hear him sing, and watch him carve a chair out of a log or make a table out of a tree. They would gather around him and take turns pressing their teeny hands flat against his great big one. Every night he would gather the children on the grassy meadow and tell them stories. Fascinated, the children would listen as long as Shaddai or their weary eyes allowed. The children loved Shaddai, and Shaddai loved the children. He knew each one by name, and he knew everything about them. He knew Lucy's love of birds. He knew Roland's fear of darkness. He knew Daphne was friendly and Spencer was shy. He knew Paladin was curious. When one of them called his name, he dropped whatever he was doing and turned. His giant heart had 100 strings, each held by a different child, and Shaddai loved each one the same. That's why he built the wall. The wall was a high stone fence surrounding the village. Shaddai had built it rock upon rock. The wall was so tall it stood high above Shaddai. Even if he stretched his arms as high as he could, he still couldn't touch the top of the wall. He spent days building it, and as he built, he did not sing. A deadly forest stood outside the village. As Shaddai built the fence, he would often pause and look into the shadows beyond. Cruel thorns and savage beasts and hidden pits filled the dark forest. It was no place for the children Shaddai loved. Beyond the wall is danger, he would tell the children in solemn tones. You were made for my village, not for the terrible land beyond. Stay with me. It's safe here. But in his heart, he knew it was only a matter of time. The day he placed the final stone on the wall, he returned to his shop, took a long aspen branch, sat down at his bench, and carved a staff. Shaddai stood the staff in a corner. I'll be ready, he told himself. Some time later, a boy ran into Shaddai's workshop. The sandy-haired child, with searching eyes and a restless energy, brought the maker both joy and concern. Shaddai! In one motion, the maker dropped his hammer and turned. What is it, Paladin? The boy spoke in spurts and grasps for air. The wall! I found a hole. It's a big opening, sir. The boy's hand stretched to show the size. Someone could crawl through it. Shaddai pulled over a stool and sat down. I knew it would be you, Paladin, my child. Tell me, how did you find it? I was walking along the wall searching for holes. Paladin paused, surprised that Shaddai knew. Yes, I was searching for holes. So you could see out into the forest. I was curious, Shaddai. I wanted to know why you won't let us go out there. Why it's so bad. Shaddai motioned for the boy to come to him. When Paladin came near, the maker cupped the small face in his hands and lifted it so the boy could look directly into his eyes. The urgency of the look caused Paladin's stomach to feel empty. Paladin, listen to me. The lands out there are not for you. They are not for me. A journey into the forest will hurt you. You were not made for those lands. Let your feet carry you to the many places you can go, not to the one place you can't. If you leave here, you will not find your way back. Paladin spoke softly. You'll fix the hole then? No, Paladin. I created the hole because I love you so much. But you just said you don't want us to leave. I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay with me. But I did make the opening when I built the wall. But if you don't fix it, said Paladin, the children might leave. I know, Paladin. I want the children to stay because they want to, not because they have to. Paladin didn't understand. Uncomfortable, he turned to leave. He needed to think about what Shaddai had said. As he entered the sunlight, he looked back into the shop. There sat Shaddai, leaning forward, still watching. Paladin was confused. Part of him wanted the safety of Shaddai's shop, while another part of him drew him toward the fence. He looked again into the shop. Shaddai was standing now, not moving, but standing. His large hand stretched out to the boy. Paladin turned quickly away, as if he didn't see it. He walked as fast as he could, aimlessly at first, and then purposely toward the fence. I won't get too near, he said to himself. I'll just peek out. Questions came as quickly as his steps. Why do I want to do what Shaddai doesn't want me to do? Why am I so curious? Is it wrong to want to see beyond the fence? By now, Palladium was at the hole. Without stopping to think, he laid on his stomach and he squirmed through just far enough to stick his head out to the other side. I'll just take a quick look, he told himself. What could be wrong with that? Shaddai said he made the hole because he loved us. I wonder what he's keeping from me. As if his knees were moving on their own, Palladium crawled further. Soon he was through the hole and on the other side of the wall. He rose slowly to his feet. For several moments he didn't move. He wondered if something would come out of the trees to hurt him. Nothing did. He relaxed his shoulders and sighed. It's not so bad, he said aloud. It's nice out here. What was Shaddai worried about? Palladium began walking into the woods. Twigs snapped beneath his bare feet. Sweet flowers scented the air. I don't see any scary creatures, he thought. The trees were so thick he could barely see the sky. Just a few steps into the woods, he said out loud, to see what it's like. After a dozen steps, he stopped. He liked the wilderness. Nothing to fear here. For the first time in his young life, he believed that Shaddai was wrong. Just wait until I tell the others. And he turned to go back to the hole. But the hole was gone. He stopped and stared. He saw only a solid wall. Palladium ran to the wall. Was this the spot where he had crawled through? Or was it somewhere else? He couldn't remember. He ran a dozen steps one way and then a dozen steps another. Nothing. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound in the woods behind him. He swung around, but he saw nothing. Palladium looked into the forest. Now it no longer looked so friendly. It was dark and threatening, as if it were about to destroy him. Desperately, Palladium searched the wall. He couldn't climb over. He couldn't break through it. There was no way home. If you leave here, you will not find your way back. Shaddai's words rang in his mind. The boy's eyes were wide with fear. He sat on the ground and hugged his knees to his chest and began to cry. As Palladium huddled there, lonely and afraid, he remembered something else Shaddai had often said. I love you so much. Does he love me enough to come and find me? Wondered the boy. Will he hear me if I call for him? Shaddai, Shaddai, I'm sorry. I didn't listen to you. Please come help me. Palladium's plea had been heard by the one who loved him even before it was spoken. For as the boy left Shaddai's workshop, the Maker had watched him as long as he could. When Palladium was out of sight, Shaddai turned not to take up his work, but to remove his apron. He hung his tools on the wall. Then he reached into the corner to take his staff, the one he'd carved after he finished the wall. Even before Palladium had reached the wall, Shaddai had left the shop. Even before Palladium had asked for help, Shaddai was on the way to give it. Even before the hole in the wall had closed, Shaddai had opened another. His strong hands pulled away the rocks until he could see into the forest. With his staff at his side, Shaddai crawled through the hole. He left the village he'd made and set out in search of his child. And that is how this story ends.
You are listening to Halftime with executive strategist Toni Emehel. Today's broadcast has been brought to you by Next Level Plus Project Management and Business Consultants. Learn more about how Next Level Plus can help you solve the right problems and seize the right opportunities by calling 704-780-2997 or visit their website at nextlevelplus.org.